The church was silent, except for the sound of whispered disapproval. Rows of well-dressed guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting from the groom at the altar to the bride walking down the aisle. She wasn't in a designer gown. She wasn't escorted by her proud parents. Instead, her heels clicked on the marble floor as if echoing every judgmental thought in the room. Her parents weren't smiling. They weren't even standing. They sat stiffly in the front pew, their expressions sharp with embarrassment, whispering to relatives who couldn't stop staring. To them, this wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a scandal. Their daughter marrying a man they believed was beneath her, a man with no pedigree, no wealth, and no proper reputation. But here's the irony. The moment they called the lowest point of her life would one day become the moment that changed everything. Her name, Claire Anderson. A woman who was told her entire life that appearances mattered more than character. That the right ring, the right degree, the right address defined a person's worth. Yet here she was smiling, even as her own family refused to give their blessing. Why? Because Claire knew something they didn't. Something no one in that judgmental room could have predicted, that this man, this so-called mistake, was about to help her uncover a truth that would shake the very foundations of her family's pride. But before we talk about the twist, let's rewind. Who was Claire Anderson, really? What led her to this aisle, standing tall despite humiliation? And how did her life go from being the golden daughter of a respected family to the embarrassment they tried to hide? Stay with me, because this story isn't about shame. It's about strength, redemption, and one twist no one saw coming. And before we dive deeper, welcome story lovers. From where are you watching? Drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Claire Anderson wasn't born into struggle. She was born into comfort, a tidy suburban home in Connecticut. The kind with perfectly mowed lawns, carefully planned holiday cards, and neighbors who competed over whose kid got into the better private school. Her father was a successful attorney. Her mother, a socialite who lived for charity galas. From the outside, their family looked flawless. Inside, though, Claire always felt like she was on stage. Every move she made was measured. Every word scrutinized. She wasn't allowed to fail, stumble, or even experiment with her own identity. Being an Anderson meant you didn't just live, you performed. Claire learned early that affection in her house wasn't unconditional, it was transactional. Good grades earned praise. Being named prom queen brought smiles. But any crack in the image, any imperfection, that was met with icy silence. She tried for years to be the perfect daughter. Ivy League school? Check. Corporate internship? Check. Dating men her parents approved of? Check. But inside she felt hollow. Every yes was really a quiet no to herself. Then came the first crack. During her senior year, she fell in love not with the clean-cut finance major her parents paraded around, but with a scholarship student named David. He was kind, brilliant, and the opposite of everything her parents expected. His family didn't have money, but they had warmth, laughter, and a bond Claire had never felt at home. When her parents found out, the fallout was brutal. Her father called David a phase. Her mother said he was an embarrassment. They threatened to cut her off, to shame her, to remind her of who she really was. And for a time, Claire believed them. She broke things off, burying herself back in the life they scripted. But the cost was steep. The more she tried to meet their expectations, the emptier she felt. Work became a treadmill, relationships hollow transactions. The applause of her parents' friends couldn't mask the loneliness that grew inside her. And then, just when she thought she had buried her true self for good, David reappeared. This time, not as a boy trying to prove himself, but as a man who had quietly built his own path. Not flashy, not rich, but real. And that's when Claire faced the hardest choice of her life: betray herself again, or risk losing her family's approval forever. The turning point came during a Thanksgiving dinner. The Anderson house was full. of laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes, crystal glasses clinking, and polite conversation flowing like scripted dialogue. Claire, by then, had been secretly seeing David again. She hadn't told her parents not yet, but fate has a way of pulling the truth into the light. Her younger brother, scrolling through social media at the table, smirked and said, "Claire, is this you? Who's the guy?" He turned his phone. For everyone to see a picture of Claire and David laughing in a coffee shop, his arm around her shoulders. The room went still. Her father's jaw tightened. Her mother's smile froze. And then the questions began sharp, pointed, humiliating. Is this what you've been hiding? Do you know what people will say? Do you understand what this does to our family's reputation? Claire tried to answer, but every word was drowned in their outrage. She excused herself from the table, retreating to her childhood bedroom, shaking with anger and shame. That night, David called. He told her, "Claire, you can't keep living for them. At some point, you have to choose yourself." His voice was steady, but Claire heard the pain behind it. He didn't want to lose her again, and he didn't. Weeks later, she made her decision. She would marry David, not for rebellion, not for revenge, but for love, for freedom, for the life she wanted, but choosing him meant war. Her parents launched a campaign of disapproval. They refused to attend the engagement party. Relatives whispered that she was throwing her life away. Even her colleagues hinted that she was marrying down. Every insult was a dagger, but Claire stood firm. The real conflict, though, wasn't just external, it was inside her. Could she really walk away from the safety net of her family? Could she bear the humiliation of being labeled the embarrassment? Every day leading up to the wedding, that question haunted her. And yet what no one realized was that the Anderson family, so obsessed with appearances, had cracks of their own. Cracks that were about to shatter in the most public way possible. The wedding day arrived, not the grand, magazine-worthy event her parents had dreamed of, but a modest ceremony in a historic chapel with close friends and David's family. Claire's parents reluctantly showed up, faces like stone, whispering their discontent loud enough for everyone to hear. As Claire walked down the aisle, their disapproval weighed heavy. Guests exchanged glances, murmuring about the fall of the Anderson daughter. But then, right in the middle of the ceremony, something happened. One of her father's law partners, sitting a few rows back, leaned forward and whispered to a guest, "It's ironic, isn't it? The Andersons worried about reputation. And yet if people knew the truth about Richard's firm, the words carried further than he intended." Murmurs spread. Eyes shifted not to Claire, but to her father. And here's the twist. David knew. For months, he had been quietly gathering information. His work in nonprofit auditing had uncovered shady dealings at her father's firm undisclosed. Funds, misused donations, the very things her parents prided themselves on, condemning in others. And now, as Claire stood at the altar, the truth began to leak out. Her parents, who had mocked her for marrying a man beneath her, were suddenly the ones drowning in whispers of scandal. The humiliation they tried to heap on her came crashing back onto them. Claire didn't plan it. She didn't need to. Truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. In that moment, standing tall in her simple gown, Claire realized she wasn't the embarrassment. She was the only honest one in a room full of masks. The fallout was swift. Within weeks, investigations into her father's law firm began. Donations dried up. Invitations to galas stopped coming. The Anderson name, once a symbol of prestige, was now a cautionary tale. Claire, she didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate their downfall. She simply lived. With David by her side, she found a new kind of freedom. They built a small but meaningful life, one grounded not in appearances but in authenticity. Together, they started a foundation for underprivileged students, giving them the opportunities neither of them had growing up. For the first time, Claire felt joy not as performance but as truth. Her parents, stripped of their social armor, had to face what they had done, not just to her, but to themselves. And while reconciliation didn't come overnight, something unexpected happened. Her mother, once so harsh, reached out months later, humbled and quiet. She asked to see her daughter, not to criticize, but simply to be near her. Claire agreed. 'Cause redemption, she realized, wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about living right even when others couldn't see it. Today, when people ask about her wedding, Claire laughs. It wasn't the day my parents wanted, she says, but it was the day I finally chose myself, and that choice, it changed everything. They once called Claire's wedding an embarrassment. But the truth, it was the first honest day of her life. Her parents built their world on appearances, but appearances fade. What lasts is courage, the courage to stand in your truth, even when everyone calls you a fool. Claire didn't just marry David, she married freedom. She married the life her heart had been begging her to choose. And here's the final twist. Years later, when her parents' reputation had all but crumbled, it was Claire and David who supported them, quietly, without fanfare. Not because she owed them, but because compassion was stronger than pride. Her parents once believed her marriage ruined their name. In reality, it saved their humanity. So ask yourself, how many of us are still performing for others, afraid to live for ourselves? And what would happen if, like Claire, we finally stopped pretending? Because sometimes the greatest embarrassment is never choosing the life that was meant for you. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.